Hello chess friends and welcome to the Chess channel, and welcome to a very special video that I decided to share with you today. It's about the Danish Gambit that we have recently studied in one great game between Stockfish 13 against Lila C0 from the Computer Chess Championship in 2021. The Danish Gambit is really one of the most aggressive gambits that you can see or that you can face, as I said also in my previous video. I decided to create a separate playlist now of the Danish Gambit, and the cool part about this video is that one of my followers, Oisev Onus, texted me 3 games in the Danish Gambit. They are really great examples how things can go wrong if black doesn't make a good continuation in the Danish Gambit. These are basically Danish Gambit disasters for black, so that I decided to first show you really the common mistakes I think in the Danish Gambit that black can make. And thanks again to Oisev Onus, he texted me these really great games. I was familiar with one game. I saw that earlier, but now these 2 games, the further 2 games that I will show you now in this video, I didn't know about. I never heard of also about this player. So these are really great games. As I said, these are common mistakes I think that black can make. And thanks again Oisev for texting me these great games, because they are really instructive and they are really great and sharp games, and they're showing basically the main attacking themes in the Danish Gambit. I think you should be really familiar with this common attacks that you can use in order to punish your opponent in an early stage of the game. So in the continuation of the series, I think we'll cover also many great lines for black. We'll find, I think, also good defensive strategies for black, how to counterplay the Danish Gambit, because the Danish Gambit is actually one of the irregular gambits. It's not so good immediately to play it. I think black has several good choices how to make that happen, but basically if you don't know what's the best continuation, please, from black's perspective, rely simply on the common basic principles in chess. So securing the king first and minor piece activity, that's I think the main idea in every particular opening, even in gambit lines like this. So you should first secure the king and then of course minor piece development. That's the most important thing, because I think in these 3 examples that I've prepared here for you, black will break basically the basic principles in chess. That's why black gets punished. So let's check out now the first example. It's a gameplay by Fidler against Jerry Bosic from 1952. So let's check out now what happened. E4 here played by white, E5, we have D4, the Danish Gambit is on the board here after move C3. So okay, black takes now. We have D takes C3, now bishop to C4, and recently in this top game between Stockfish 13 against Lila C0, Lila C0 was also forced to take out now the second pawn, the second gambit pawn in the Danish Gambit, the pawn on B2. So now after bishop to B2, knight to F6, which I basically like. Maybe there are better continuations with bishop to B4 immediately, but okay, at least black applied, I think, the basic principle of minor piece development, and trying of course now maybe to play bishop to B4 and then castle kingside. So here knight to C3, now bishop to B4. So far a good continuation here for black, but after move knight to E2, which wasn't now the best of moves for white should not play this continuation like this. Queen to B3 is much more aggressive because it comes with a double attack against this weak square on F7, and then maybe here black would be forced to take out bishop takes C3, then queen to C3, but white is simply relying on this diagonal. Still black is slightly better because of these 2 extra pawns, but white makes the mistake. Knight to E2 gives a huge advantage now for black, and black makes the mistake with the move knight to E4. What's the idea about this move? This is not a good idea for black, because we have talked about in the previous video, but in the game, as I said, played by Stockfish 13 against Lila C0, that actually we can apply here the basic strategy and defensive strategy hiding behind your enemy's pawns, which means even if the rook comes here somehow to the E file, still our king, the black's king, would be protected by this pawn on E4. So basically the white pawn is standing in the way of a potential rook activity on the E file. That's I think the main issue here. So with the move knight to E4, okay, you get another pawn, but that's not the point here. I think you have your 2 extra pawns. Now it's really time to secure the king with the move knight to E2. Black, as I said, made now a huge mistake with castling. You see now white is only one move far away in order to open the E file, and that's why here knight to C3. Here after knight to C3 we have now castling, but it comes simply too late. This is already a +3 position for white. The white attacks simply the position with the move knight to D5. The bishop has to retreat to C5 if you don't want to lose it, and then white played an immortal attack with the move knight to F6. So you see how much trouble you can get if you don't secure the king first in the Danish Gambit. I think black should have played this castling there much earlier to move knight to f6. Basically the game is simply over. Here you're pretty much forced to take g takes f6, and now here after queen to g4, king to h8, queen to h4, this is simply not something that you can defend. After move bishop to d3, it's something that black has to resign. So there's nothing to make. You cannot advance the pawn on f5. You cannot stop anymore this attack against this weak square in h7. So look at this. All of these pieces, the bishop on c8, knight on b8, rook on a8, rook on f8 are on the starting squares. White didn't even have to activate the rooks in order to punish black's bad play. Now this was, I think, a very instructive example how you should not basically take out the pawn on e4 here, the third pawn. That's actually a pawn that protects us when we flip the board here. Let's flip the board here from black's perspective. This pawn on e4 is basically protecting our e file. Meanwhile, maybe we can play something like d6, castling, knight to c6, fast developing, simply getting the pieces into the game, and then rely on our two extra pawns, trying maybe to simplify the position by trading off more minor pieces, trading off even the queens off the board. When the queens would be off the board, I think then again black could have a decent game. So that's our, I think, the main defensive strategies for black. As I said, simply hiding behind this pawn, and then maybe a potential early trades of pieces. So let's see now another example. It's a gameplay by Hans Linden against Ladislav Machewski. Here again, this idea. So let's see, e4, e5, Danish Gambit c3. We have d takes c3, bishop to c4. Again, black takes the second pawn, bishop to b2, bishop to b4, and now knight to c3, knight to f6, knight to e2, and again this idea, knight takes e4, the castling, knight takes c3, bishop to c3. Here black hoped, okay, I will simply take out the knight, I have now a decent game. But now after move bishop to c3, what black was hoping for here is to defend this pawn on g5 with the move queen to g5, getting maybe with the king somehow out of the range of the rook on the e file, and then maybe develop the pieces fast. Again, it was a disaster because here white has of course the opportunity to play rook to e1. After move king to d8, here f4 was played by white. It was a very sharp attack, although the engine suggests here something like h4. h4 is much more accurate. After something like queen to g6, queen to e2 is here very nice line for white. White can attack immediately. The position is threatened here. The move queen to e7, checkmate. You would be forced to play something like knight to c6, but now after bishop to d5, basically the game is over because you have to play d6, and now after bishop to c6, you don't have time to recapture the knight here. After b takes c6, you get checkmated. So basically white is winning a piece. So, but okay, still after f4, it's a much better position for white. Black didn't react correctly, should have played here something like queen to c5 first, but still after something like bishop to d4, even if you take here queen to c4, the problem is now you get bishop to g7 followed with bishop to f6 is very dangerous. So again, white is simply winning here. So after move f4, black simply took queen to f4, but it's a disaster. Bishop to g7, again the same idea. We have rook to g8, queen to g4, a great deflection motif here by white. If you take, of course, then you get bishop to f6, and here queen to d6 was played, but now bishop to f6, a very nice discovered attack. After queen to f6, queen takes g8, the game was again over. You see, again, I think the problems with this third pawn, so you should consider this third pawn idea. Maybe in a later stage of the game this would be possible to somehow maybe take out the pawn on e4, but I think in our analysis we can agree that the third pawn is a suicide for black immediately, because you're opening simply too much files, too much diagonals. Even if you take out now two pieces here somehow, even if you trade off more pieces, still white is continuing, I think, with a very dangerous bishop here, with an activity by the rook on the e file, with a great queen here. That's also very important. The queen will find always good squares now into this game, so that's why I think the third pawn is, as we said, a suicide. So let's check out now here another game. It's a gameplay by Rudolf Charusek against Jakob Walner. Here again, let's see now the Danish Gambit setup. D takes c3, again bishop to c4. Now black plays, I think, a much better continuation with move knight to f6. First developing, we have now knight to f3, bishop to c5, and now knight to c3. Here black doesn't take out the second pawn, even it's not even attacking the third pawn. Here after move d6, first we're playing the blockade here around the square e5, and so far it's a slightly better for the position for black, because black is of course the extra pawn. But now after castling knight to g5. Knight to g5 is actually not the best of moves here for white. The better continuation is maybe simply to proceed here with the move e5. Then after d takes e5, then queen to d8, and then knight to e5 is very dangerous. The piece activity of white is very dangerous. You would be forced now to play something like bishop to e6. But even in this continuation after bishop to e6 and f takes e6, I don't think that white gained so much. If you could just imagine, if white even wins this pawn on e6, I don't think that something dramatically is going on. Meanwhile, while maybe white is battling for the pawn on e6, black is also doing something, and I think the main strategical defensive goal by black is accomplished by trading off the queens. When the queens are off the board, you see how white's attack is simply splashed. White's attack is not so dangerous. So I think the defensive strategy, the first fast development, as we said, hiding behind your enemy's pawns, then also to trade off the queens is simply perfectly fine, and it's a +1 position now for black. So that's why knight to g5, not the best of moves. But you see how dangerous this Danish attack can be, Danish gambit can be when you didn't play the best continuation. Here h6 is now again not the best of moves, because you get knight to f7, here rook to f7, and now after move e5, knight to g4 was now really the worst move by black. Actually, the engine, for instance, suggests something like knight to h7. Now after potential b4, the bishop can maybe retreat, but still white has an activity. But I think with the move knight to h7, we have still a piece that's defending the king. But as I said, you see how the Danish gambit can be really dangerous. After move knight to g4, we have now e6, we have queen to h4 by black. Black hoped here for attack, but it's simply too late, because we have now e takes f7, king has to move to f8, bishop to f4, first protecting our h2 pawn. In the continuation, knight to f2, we have queen to e2, threatening now queen to e8, checkmate. So that's why here again the discovered attack, knight to g4, king to h1, and now after move bishop to d7, white simply plays this other rook on the e file. Now we're again threatening queen to e8, followed with bishop to e8, then f takes e8. Again, it would be a checkmate. So after move knight to c6, queen to e8 anyway, because we have now this other rook on the f file. Now the king is again endangered. We have rook to e8, we have f takes e8, bishop to e8, and now after move bishop to d6, we have now the double check, and it was a checkmate. It was simply game over for black. So as I said, this Danish gambit is very dangerous. You see how you can make mistakes in an early stage of the game, how white can also make mistakes by not playing the best moves, by simply pushing maybe the pawns too early in the game, activating maybe the knights in the game too early. So as I said, we'll study also some different lines in the Danish gambit. So far, this is it for this video. Thanks again, Noise, for this very instructive 3 examples. I think you can use them now in order maybe to study the Danish gambit more. I think the Danish gambit will happen to you if you're e4 e5 player. Maybe you can sometimes also, as I said, use it in order to surprise your opponent, but I think you should be also familiar with the common defensive strategies here from black's perspective. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Really beautiful games and beautiful examples of this very tricky opening. If you want to study maybe some good openings for black, check out my hyper accelerated ranks Sicilian defense series as good responses to e4, and my Nimzo in the defense series as a good response to d4. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.